Welcome back to the Become Limitless podcast. This episode I want to talk about living longer and living healthier, part 2. So we first started talking about what we can eat and how often we should eat and how we really overeat in the first part of this podcast series. Now, I wanted to get into how you can live longer with adversity in a different way. Not hunger, but let's go physical adversity in a way of exercise, of heat, of cold, and how and why there's science behind it, and why you should be exposing yourself to these things. Now, I want to really try and give you again some action steps at the end of this episode once I summarize it, so you can take this away and you can really start to extend your health span. And that's what we're talking about here on this last couple of episodes. This part 1 and part 2 of these episodes is what action can I take now? It doesn't cost anything. You just need to start doing these things, exposing yourself to hot and cold, or exercise, or being hungry, or avoiding some foods that will let you live longer. According to the science, lets you live longer and healthier. For however long that might be, we don't know yet. But from all these blue zones and things like that, if you've ever heard of those terms, the people in these areas where just people seem to live to 100 easily. It's just a common thing for them to do, where majority of the population of this planet, you're looking at around 80 to 90 is where you normally live, where these people are normally getting to 100 and they're healthy. So without further ado, let's get into this episode, and let's start it off with exercise. Why exercise? Why would exercise? Obviously there's a whole bunch of health benefits, but why is there longevity benefits? Why do we have these? Why is exercise such a good thing for us? Again, we can go back and look at what we used to do a lot of back when we were obviously evolving, becoming into the Homo sapiens we are. What was the case? What were we doing? We were hungry. We were hot more often than not. Cold more often than not. And we had to exercise. There was a lot of exercise. There was a lot of walking, and there was a lot of high intensity exercise that we do on occasion to obviously hunt or whatever the case may be, to find things, to travel, to change where we were going, to avoid predators, whatever it was. So our bodies adapted these to obviously use these adversities. I'll say that lightly, because adversity really is amazing, because it triggers this thing called Hormesis. And Hormesis is the way our cells take that whole, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger saying, and use that literally. So if it doesn't kill you, that small short-term stress that you get exposed to will actually allow those longevity genes to kick in. So exercise, why is it good? Why is exercise so good for you? So we know that that it's good for your cardiovascular health. You know it's good for your lungs when you exercise. It's good for your bones, your muscle density, your bone density, and your muscle growth and strength, and like just keeping that all ready and raring to go. But why is it so good for your longevity? We have these things on the end of our DNA called telomeres, and they're like the caps. They're like the end of your finger. They cap it off. They hold all the DNA, so the DNA is all spooled up, and it goes to the ends where the telomeres are, and they cap it off and keep it nice and neat. As we age, we start to shorten these telomeres at the end of your DNA, and obviously that's not a good thing, because over time, the shorter they are, it's a hallmark of aging. The shorter they are, the biologically older you are. So it's another way we can look at the age of a person biologically. what does exercise do then? It helps strengthen these telomeres. It helps lengthen these telomeres. It also does many, many more things. So by exercising, you're creating that adversity. You're mimicking the hunger in a certain sense. You're also getting yourself into a hypoxic state where your oxygen's low. And when your cells have less oxygen for that short period of time, as I said, hormesis, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, it allows those bodies to activate those longevity genes we talked about. So AMPKs, mTOR, we downregulate mTOR, we upregulate AMPKs, we upregulate the Sirtuins. And of course, they are obviously triggered when there's an adverse event, isn't it? So whenever we've got an adverse event, so we're exercising, there's adversity on our cardiovascular system. Obviously, we have less oxygen in the system in general because we're using so much oxygen so often. We're also stressing our muscles and our bones. All those cells are involved in all those mechanisms and processes in the body are under a little bit of adversity. So what do? They hunker down. They live longer. They start to activate these amazing genes. So, okay, what do we know is Sirtuins, a couple of Sirtuin genes, will actually repair the caps and lengthen those telomeres. If your telomeres are damaged and there's unspooling of the DNA, obviously that's the information being lost. The information being read from that area isn't going to be as accurate if it's not spooled and tightly wound together. So the Sirtuins will go in there and cap these off and lengthen these telomeres, which are what you use for what we can look at to see how old we are biologically, can't we? So it's very important that we upregulate those Sirtuins, upregulate those AMPKs, downregulate that mTOR for longevity. And the body will sense that through that hormesis, that stress, which is what exercise does. It puts us into that state of stress. So by doing this, we allow ourselves to obviously lengthen the telomeres, increase blood flow, increase the amount of blood vessels we have in our body as well, which is very important for obviously oxygenation of the bloodstream, of the muscles and areas that we need that oxygen. That's where we go into a hypoxic state, where there's less oxygen. The body wants to develop a better way of to deliver the oxygen to the areas we need it. How does it do that? It creates more blood vessels. More blood vessels obviously allows more blood to get to the areas we need for the oxygenation of those areas. So, as I said before, that low oxygen creates that adversity, that hormesis, that program, the Hormesis program, activates these amazing Sirtuins and AMPK genes, which allow us to grow more of these blood vessels, which in turn, when we get older, do drop. The blood vessel counts that we have when we get older drop. We don't have as many. We don't have a better ability. We don't have a great ability to obviously produce these blood vessels. Because if we did, we wouldn't see aging, would we? We wouldn't see our ability to exercise diminish. We wouldn't see all these declines in physical attributes that we have. If we could keep the blood vessels at the same level, we'd be able to oxygenate the body just as well as we did when we were younger. Hence, why we want to exercise. If we exercise, we'll be able to keep going. We'll be able to keep that count up as high as possible. Keep the muscle density as high as possible. Keep the muscle strength and size as high as we can possibly for our body types. The bone density as high as we can. It's all relative to your age. So, all these things around exercise, it's a must. It's a must. You can't skip exercise. You use a drug, you can't use fasting, you can't eat a certain diet that gets the same activation as exercise. These things complement each other. So exercising and fasting is amazing to activate those genes, those longevity genes. If we do one or the other, we're going to get benefits on both sides, but one won't help replace that other side of the scale. By going out there and exercising, it's very important. So what does the science say about it? It says that if you go out there and you're seen to exercise for 30 minutes of jogging, whatever it is, just a moderate intensity for 5 days, compared to someone that doesn't do that, sedentary. They sit around all day. They may walk just to do whatever they're going to do for the day. But if you do that, you can lengthen your telomeres and extend your health span, lifespan by 10 years. Just a decade. And that's pretty massive. 5 days, 30 minutes. That's what these studies have shown. Now we're going to get into a bit more information now on exactly what you need to do and what the most efficient way of getting this bonus into your system and creating this adversity hormesis program to activate these genes or downregulate these genes that we need to downregulate and upregulate. So what we're going to talk about is we don't have to go and flog ourselves. What do we exactly need to do exercise-wise to get this health benefit? Now, the latest research shows that you only need to exercise for about 10 minutes a day, moderate exercise, and this will help extend those lives, that years, that health span that you have. Now, not all exercise is equal. We have HIIT training, which is high intensity interval training, and it's been seen or has been shown to have the greatest number of benefits when it comes to promoting those genes, promoting that longevity inside your body. So, as well as other health benefits, your lung, your cardiovascular system, the blood vessels, all those things that we're going to be measuring and talking about this whole episode. Now, it's also been shown that especially in the older exercises and older people that do the HIIT training for just 10 minutes a day, that they get the even better results than what you do when you're younger, as in my age, so about that 30-year-old mark. Now, as a guide, you need to be looking at about the heart rate of about between 70 and 80% of your max. There's a lot of equations out there. I'll let you go sort that out yourself. The easiest one is really 220 minus your age will give you your max heart rate. Then you can work out your percentages from there. But 70 to 85% of your heart rate, you must be out of breath. You must be out of breath. And you must be able to just say a couple of words in a sentence without having to stop, take a breath. That's the best way to measure your effort, and it's when you know you're at the right spot, where you're actually out of breath, you get that hypoxic, that low oxygen, your body's starting to have to work hard to get as much breathing in, as much oxygen and air as possible to get that oxygen into the system. Okay, so that's what we're aiming for. And we need to create that hormesis from those events. Otherwise, you're just doing that moderate exercise. Yes, you do get benefits, but not as great when you get this hypoxic state. Now, just go out there, 10 minutes, and just do, there's Tabata, go do some burpees like I have been doing. I did for the first month of this year, I did 100 burpees each day. And I can tell you now, if you do 100 burpees, you'll be out of breath and you will be in that hypoxic state. You will be activating all those lovely longevity genes that you need to be, and downregulating the ones you don't want to have active. And that takes about 10 minutes to do that if I'm not rushing it. Just through it, proper, strong burpees, and that allowed me to obviously get out of breath, because I was definitely out of breath, because it's such a compound, whole body exercise. So find yourself a little workout routine, whether you even want to do like a running interval, like so run, walk, getting that heart rate up and then walking to recover. Get the heart rate up and then walking to recover. It's a fantastic way. You can do that for 10 to 15 minutes each day and you'll get those same benefits. All right, let's move on to temperature, hot and cold exposure. Now, what does that do? Allowing that our body, again, that's that hormesis, that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Allowing the body to be exposed to temperatures outside this lovely little window we have that we operate in. It's really small. And if we get outside that, obviously externally, our body has to start working towards warming it up or cooling it down. In that regard, then we start to activate the hormesis program, what's going on there, and then we start to activate longevity, our longevity genes. Now, when our body is pushed outside that window, a whole host of things start to happen. Our breathing changes, blood flow changes, obviously for cooling and heating. It's very important that our blood flow starts to adapt to what's actually going on externally, temperature-wise. Our skin, which is our biggest organ we have, will change. Our skin will start to change. It'll obviously open up in the heat to allow the sweat to come out, or it'll close up and try and protect us from the cold as much as possible. Now, these things, although that you might not like even perceive that they're happening, obviously, because we're not really aware of it happening. It's all that subconscious, autonomous, in the background program that runs, the system that runs in the background, all covered by the brain that runs, that is in response to these exposures that allow our heart rate, our skin to change, our breath rate to change. And this is all to get us into homeostasis again, into that comfort. And it's why we're so attracted to air conditioning in the hot, heat in the cold, because we want to be comfortable. It's why we have clothing. Clothing's been made to protect us from the elements, where because of the way we lived as when we were evolving, as I was talking about earlier in the episode, we needed to develop a way to have clothing to regulate our body temperatures because of the cold. Now, that then leads into, so why is that related to the survival circuit? Why does that happen? We needed to. We need to be able to survive when it got cold or outside that body temperature normality, that homeostasis, that balanced state. So the cold side of these things, let's talk about that to start with. The cold allows us to activate the genes that would create brown fat. And our brown fat, have you ever heard of brown fat? Not many people have. Brown fat is amazing for starting or creating mitochondria and activating energy. Now, why do you say, why would the cold be wanting to do that? Well, the mitochondria, when they do their thing, create heat. Heat heats the body up. So the more brown fat we have, the more mitochondrial function we have, the better ability to heat ourselves up. And that's in direct relation to cold exposure, cold therapy, whatever we want to do. So by doing that, we have this brown fat. It's really good for blood flow as well. Blood flow it's been linked to longevity. Like brown fat has been linked to longevity. That's what you'll find in those blue zones. Colder environments where people have a lot more brown fat than most people. Now it's believed that infants are the only ones that had brown fat because they would never be able to regulate their own body temperature. So when you're younger, if you didn't know, you don't regulate your own body temperature. Therefore, we have a lot of brown fat. And that is how the body can keep it hot when we need to if we're cold. We really don't have the ability to keep cool at that age, so we'll talk about that later. But yeah, so in that instance, we only thought that we had brown fat when we were infants. It turns out we can have brown fat. It's a lot harder to find. In with our normal fats, adults tissue. I don't know how to pronounce that word. I do apologise for that. So that allows us to obviously have a greater mitochondria function. Again, guess what drops with age? Mitochondrial function. Mitochondrial function drops with age. Therefore, it's very important that we get these brown fat up, because when you get older, it's harder and harder and harder to obviously make more brown fat. So what are we going to do? We're going to expose ourselves to the cold. This allows us to turn on all that energy, give us more energy in that regard, give us more mitochondrial function. It also boosts the sirtuins and the activity. So that energy, which is NAD, which comes from your brown fat, is what those genes want to eat. They use that as energy. So without that, you don't have that energy. You don't have the activation of those genes for longevity. So you can see how it's all starting to link in. It's funny how all these adversities, which create that Hormesis program to run, which then link to our longevity genes, all start to come of when we're not comfortable. It's interesting, isn't it? And what do we always look for in our lives? How often do we search for comfort in everything we do? How can we make this easier? How can I make me more comfortable when I do this? Where in fact, that has a negative response. Like if you're comfortable your whole life, your body won't go into these amazing states where it starts to create longevity, repair DNA, repair cells, repair everything, make you live longer and healthier, fight off diseases, you name it, the crazy things that these amazing longevity genes do. You'll never get that chance. So you need to get out there and you need to find these adversity in these different situations and circumstances. Now, getting that brown fat created from that cold exposure is very important, because you get all those benefits. So what do I do? I do ice baths. I do them once a week, and I'll have cold showers where I want to get goosebumps. I want to get a bit of a shiver on. If you get that cold, or if at night you get a cold, or anywhere you got cool, don't wear the blankets. Feel a little bit cooler for a long period of time. Obviously, if you wake up because you're cold, warm yourself up again. But again, you've just exposed yourself to cool. Your body's realised that. It wants to get itself back into it, so it's working its butt off to get itself back into that homeostasis. That adversity program is triggered. The Hormesis program is triggered. Ta-da! We have those genes being activated. Now, on the other side of things, the studies are coming out still. The studies are coming out in regards to heat and what hot does and why that activates so many things, and why does it produce the NAD boost NAD production. Why does it create longevity as well? In the same way that cold goes that side, hot goes that side. You don't activate brown fat, you don't create brown fat from being exposed to the cold. But it's more of a process that we can look at, like fasting. Being exposed to the heat has a very similar effect as fasting does on the body. Now, why is that important? Like, why does it have the same effect as fasting? Well, from the last episode, we know it's really good at upregulating and downregulating mTOR. Upregulating AMPK and Sirtuins, downregulating that mTOR, and getting all those genes regulated in the right directions. Why that occurs from getting exposed to heat, there's still stuff coming out and in regard to how that actually happens. But all we know is that it boosts that NAD. NAD is a fuel for a lot of those longevity genes, and the more we have, the more ability our Sirtuins have to be activated and working in our defenses and with us to live long, healthier lives. But realistically, if you can expose yourself to hot, then expose yourself to cold as well as doing the being hungry, eating less meat, exercising, doing that 10 minutes. And these things are easy to do. So if we start to do them in combination, then you can see how altogether we can get a massive effect. Like, as I said earlier, like that 30 minutes of exercise, moderate exercise daily, it lengthens someone's life by a decade. That's crazy. You can lengthen someone's life, and healthy too. Not just lengthening it just because, just giving them 10 years of extra sickness and age and related illnesses and things like that, but living healthier for 10 years. That's where the money's at. If I can live longer or live a healthier 10 years, instead of being 70 and sick, I can get to 80 or 90 and not be sick. I can be completely healthy. I can be very functional. I can operate just like I would as a 50-year-old or 40-year-old. That's where we want to be. That's what the whole purpose of these episodes have been. If we start doing these things as early as possible, we can start to obviously slow this process of aging down, this disease of aging. Now, what I suggest out of this, that's what we're going to go through. Get your 10 minutes of HIIT workout, that high intensity interval training. Run, walk, run, walk, run, walk. Do some Tabata, which is a certain amount of time on, certain amount of time off, resting. Find your exercise which you want and resonates with you. Weight training is really good for this too. And then expose yourself to hot and cold. Saunas, amazing for heat. Or if you're where I'm from, go stand outside in the sun or the humidity. Let it just bathe you. Sweat, get uncomfortable, get hot. Let your body work to move your body back towards that homeostasis, that balanced state. And if you're somewhere that's cold, go expose yourself. Get the goosebumps, get the shivering. Or expose yourself to real cold, ice bath, cryotherapy. Those things will allow your body to activate those longevity genes. You'll feel really, like I find that doing an ice bath makes you really invigorated, energized. The same with heat. If I go out and expose myself to heat, I get really hot, which is quite easy for me to do, and then I go back and I shower, recover, get myself back into that homeostasis, that balanced state. I feel really good. I feel really strong. I feel really, really exposed. Again, short-term exposures. If I go too much heat, I hurt myself as in a negative way. Same with cold. If I go too much, I can hurt myself in a negative way. Exercise. If I do too much, it hurts you in a negative way. So ensure that this is all done balanced. It's these short-term adversities that create that hormesis, which is what doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. Now, I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I hope you can take those things that I've shared with you and you can really, really, really implement them and do them, because they are going to give you benefits in the long run. You might not see it to start with, but you will see these things when you're getting into your old age. And if you're older, implement these things because you do get benefits. It's not too late. Until next time, stay limitless.